It does say 12:30, so we'll make a start. I have to start by reading out a statement. I am obliged to inform you that this meeting is being videoed. Members of the public are entitled to record the proceedings and are requested to give prior notice so that any additional measures that may assist can be put in place. Any member of the public who has any concerns should raise them now. Right, thank you. So, item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence, but I think we've got a full house. Item 2, disposable pecuniary interests. Nobody seems to be saying anything. Item 3, minutes, and the minutes are included. I'm happy to move them. I've got a seconder? Yeah, right. They all agree? Thank you. Item 4, public question time. Now I believe there is a public question from a Mr. Green. If you'd like to come to the table, and hopefully we'll get the microphone fired up for you. You've had an answer, so you're entitled to a supplementary question.
Thank you, Chairman. May I just say a few words before I lead into the question itself?
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of minutes. As you've said, you've had the opportunity to see our original question and reply, which I believe has been drafted by Liam Cowden, your Senior Policy Officer. And that confirms that consultation responses can be trumped by the Council if it thinks its evidence shows otherwise. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to address you with our further views. I've also received a reply from Gemma Davis, your Head of Economic Growth, about the consultation process surrounding your economic growth strategy. She appears to say that the economic growth strategy is more important than the local plan. Part of our point about ignoring the views of the people of Shropshire is that the economic growth strategy, although its evidence base was known in November last year, was not even mentioned in the previous consultation on the local plan. People made it clear that they preferred a lower level of new houses and a smarter sort of economic growth with possibly fewer overall jobs. That's a more innovative approach with higher value jobs. But the preferred options now tabled before you has been hijacked by the economic growth strategy, which officers say requires 14,900 more jobs, which in turn means that 28,750 more houses that is in the preferred options. That's an increase of 21% in houses over only 20 years. The evidence behind the economic growth strategy produced by economists IPPR North began by promising that Shropshire can be a world-leading rural economy by 2030. Really? That's in comparison with now, when Shropshire is about 30th out of 40 English counties in the economic league table. That's with a GVA per head of about 20,000 compared with the top score of over 40,000 per head. Your council is meant to be promoting mitigation and adaptation to climate change. It's meant to be reducing greenhouse gas and carbon emissions. Is meant to be promoting a low carbon economy. At the moment, Shropshire people each emit an estimated 6.9 tonnes of carbon dioxide a year. That's from your sustainability scoping report. So 6.9 tonnes of carbon dioxide a year per person compared with the average for England of 6 tonnes. That's 15% more than average already. At the launch of the Council's economic growth strategy, it was admitted that no calculations whatsoever had been done to assess whether this economic growth strategy would reduce emissions. I recently heard a quote from David Attenborough. He said, "We have a finite environment, the planet. Anyone who thinks that you can have infinite growth in a finite environment is either a madman or an economist." Shropshire Council appeared to have been beguiled by the economists. So my question is, do you as a Cabinet really believe that persistent growth is the way that the Council should be going as set out in the preferred options document tabled before you? That's the questions, and once again, any views given by the public in the next round of consultation can just as easily be ignored by the Council.
I'm going to ask Councillor Robert Macy to respond, although I have to say you might want to have a written response, but I'll leave you to...
Yeah. Obviously, that was quite an extensive lead into the question itself. I think, as far as number of points you raised, I think we would contest a number of those that we're not doing anything around climate change and sustainability. You can see that through our licensing procedures and the fact that our air quality reports, there's only 2 that we need to monitor in the county now. Your comment about infinite growth, I don't think anyone is suggesting that. You'll see from the report in front of you that we have to justify any elements of the local plan. They're then inspected by an independent inspector once we've compiled those. So I think as far as that goes, most of the other points that you raised, I think were actually answered in the written question that you submitted to us and we responded to. But I'm willing to take away anything that I've missed from there and come back to you with any written responses for anything that isn't covered by that.
Yeah, it was quite detailed, so we'll see if we need to do a further detailed written response. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Right, item 5, a member questions. I haven't been notified of any, have we? That's all right. Item 6 is scrutiny items. I saw Peggy around somewhere. Do you want to start the ball rolling on this one?
The Young People's Scrutiny Committee, through a task and finish group, has reviewed council support for local delivery of youth activities within the context of 50% savings identified within the council's medium-term financial plan. The task and finish group heard a variety of evidence from local joint committee members, youth activity providers, youth forums, council's infrastructure support provider partner, neighbouring local authorities, potential partner organisations and others. The Young People's Scrutiny Committee confirmed the positive impact of youth work, universal and targeted on young people's lives. Universal provision for voluntary, uniformed and faith youth groups will continue to be supported via a contract with the Shropshire Association working with Energise. Targeted provision will continue to be supported by a number of themed groups for disabled and LGBT young people. This report is specifically concerned with targeted geographical provision, that is local commissioning of youth activities advised by LJCs and linked to local needs. Since scrutiny confirmed recommendation, the Council has reiterated the need to make significant budget cuts, and this report is written in this context. This report describes proposals to introduce revised funding proposals in support of geographically targeted youth activity provision from April 2018. These proposals are based on 1. A simplified funding formula, 2. Local intelligence and understanding, and 3. A desire to support local sustainable provision free from direct council support in recognition of the ongoing financial crisis. Working on the basis of the reduction to the existing budget from 234,950 to 1,335,000, i.e. 43%, the 6 LJC areas with the greatest identified needs are Shrewsbury, Market Drayton, Oswestry, Bridge North, Woodchurch and Ludlow, which would be allocated funding. This compares with 18 LJC areas currently receiving funding. The reduction in the number of LJC areas receiving funding results from the proposed removal of rurality funding from 12 existing LJCs and the refocusing of resources to the main market towns where the needs are greatest. We now want to consult on these new proposals prior to returning to Cabinet with the final recommendations.
Thank you. Right. There were 1 or 2 members who wished to speak on this. Pauline, do you want to start then?
Thank you very much, Leader. I fully take on board everything that's in the report, and I can understand it. We're having our funds removed by central government, and then this is passing on to the local parish councils. I'm speaking for the Wen division, in that we are going to have our grant completely taken away. We have struggled to get the youth club back into the position that it was. I'm co-chair of the Wen Youth Club, as well as being involved with the uniform, but I'm president of the Scouts for the county, so I know about youth, and what their needs are. There are some young people that don't want to join the uniform. They don't like the structure of it, so they like to go somewhere they can relax. And we've got to look into the mental health of our young people. We're constantly hearing that the problems that we've got, that they're not receiving the treatment, etc., for quite a long time, so when it's needed. And I'd like to know, how do you define special needs? Because that's in there, that's what's going to happen. In the larger market towns, the 6 larger, there's transport. Shrewsbury got 7 youth clubs. So there's transport going around the town, so they're lucky, but we haven't got that in Wen. And Wen, if you look geographically, it is surrounded by Wen Rural. And that's not just Wen Rural, we've got Lockington and going as far quite a way out. And they're the children that we are looking out for. We're not just looking, because they come to our uniformed youth groups as well. So it's not just, I'm not being totally blinkered and thinking, it's just Wen Urban. It's not. It's the whole of our area. And the children can be very isolated. I've been working with the youth organisation for many years from the district council, and one of the big concerns that Shropshire County Council had then was the fact that young people, when they were going home from school, they were isolated. They weren't in touch with anybody. I know they've got Facebook now. But then that does have other implications, that you can get bullied, etc. on Facebook, so perhaps they're not away from it. But they go to a safe environment, they're looked after by professionals who can see how these children mentally are behaving. And I just hope that there is some way that we can get some funding to keep Wen, because Shawbury now is totally supported by the voluntary youth leaders, but when we have a difficulty in getting the leaders because of the age of our population is quite high, and I would like to say, please look out for our young people. We are trying. We've had a big grant, and we've got, we're working hard in Wen, and we just had this great grant from the Awards for All, £9,500, but it's for one thing only, and that's for the arts, and that we worked hard to get that. So we're going to go now for the 9 to 11-year-olds. So we're trying to cope with all the problems across the area, and we're having a very good response because we have got to look after our children. Because everybody keeps calling young people, they're not their children still, and they need our care and they need our support.
Madge, do you want to go next?
Yep. I echo what Pauline said. I'll just pick up 1 or 2 points really. My concern again is that I see, certainly in my large primary school, that there's an enormous increase in children which come under the SEND grouping. Now that worries me when they're at the extreme, and what we have to do is we have to, by taxi, send them from Clitheroe Moreton up to Halscott, where the youth centres are. And I'm not sure that you've actually looked at that aspect of it. These children who are already in need, early help, we need to look at the transport side of it. That must be extremely costly, and I look at that and I think there's got to be another way. I don't know whether we can cross the border into Worcestershire. I know we've got the Berlin Wall between Shropshire and Worcestershire, because I see it in health. Most of all I see it in health. It drives me insane. However, nevertheless, there needs to be a little bit more of that, and not quite so much apart. Repeatedly in this report, involve the young people, yet you actually lost the Youth Parliament. Now, I always felt that the Youth Parliament would have wider ripple effects than just having people in the secondary schools being elected to the youth parliament, there was a much wider ripple effect from that. And I think that's actually a big loss. It might not show up, but I think it is. And that would have been one of the real places where you might get proper youth input. I know if we're going to do anything in Kilbury, and I chair the youth partnership in Kilbury Mortimer, so I pull in the scouts, the guides, the young farmers, Uncle Tom Coppy and all. I don't mind who it is. I get the police there, the health and all the rest of it. All I'm saying is that that loss of the youth parliament actually was a key thing for me. Page 6, rurality. We've lost our rurality. Why have we lost our rurality? Is it because we've got woodlands and green fields around us, so we don't actually need to worry about that? But things in the countryside now are not the same as they were 5, 10, 15 years ago, because most farms now are very restricted in who goes on them, for reasons of their own. And mostly it's health, or they're in some sort of an environment scheme. So it isn't open like it used to be. And even if you put them out on Clee Hill or Captain Common or something like that, there are certain dangers there, including little tunnel mining industry of years gone by where it will suddenly vanish. I get quite agitated about that. Yes, we have a lot of volunteers, but one of the things that puts the volunteers off, and it isn't that I want to go away with it because I think it's an important strand, is DBS check. And they say, what's that all about, Madge? And I'm saying, well, I'm sorry, because of but somehow or other, we need to make that not quite so dogmatic, perhaps that's the word to use it, but it is. If you want to have volunteers, you've got to go through the whole DBS check. And I have to say that being a really nasty, suspicious old lady, I often want the extended DBS as well before I put them anywhere near my children. Yes, we have some faith provision in Kilbury, but it is only one strand of faith provision. And a lot of people won't go for that at all. And I agree with Paulie, they sometimes don't want to put on the scout uniform or the guide uniform. They actually just want to relax. And when I say to them, well, we want to hang out, I asked somebody to define hang out to me once. Well, they can't. We've never been able to find the money, for instance, to have a youth cafe where you could have a hanging out. We were offered a cellar, but it was so dangerous if there was ever a fire there, we would never have got them out. So I'm just saying, it's not that we're not exploring every interest, but I do feel that this great chunk of money, particularly to go to Shrewsbury, where there are lots and lots of facilities, whereas Portland says there is ample transport, we have nothing. And I would beg you, please, during the consultation, to revisit those points. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, there were one or two other members who indicated they might want to speak on this. Do you want to speak now? Or?
Yeah.
I'll remove myself, Chairman, and then there'll be a chat.
No, I think they're all right.
Thank you for letting me speak. At the Craven Arms business meeting for the local joint committee on Thursday, there was considerable concern regarding future funding for commissioning of youth services. This grant funding is very crucial to Craven Arms and the Church Stretton Stretondale LDC. With the grant we were able to pull in funding. Last year we pulled in a large amount of funding, which came from the police, the housing, the parish and town council and local businesses. Without the money from Shropshire Council, it would be difficult to persuade funders to match fund and give a grant funding when Shropshire Council is drawing funds. Craven Arms has no secondary school and it covers a wide rural area, and we need these clubs to support the local area in the evenings. Please could you give this considerable thought and spread the money that you have more evenly. The small market towns and rural areas play a big important part of our county in Shropshire. Craven Arms and Church Stretton covers a vast amount of southwest East Shropshire. The youth are the future. We need to engage, and as part of our community we need them on board. So I urge you please to give us consideration and try and spend your funds more evenly, not just in the big towns that our colleagues already said have more facilities, more transport. Rural areas play a big part of the economy.
Thank you. you want to speak now?
I do, yeah. Right then. I want to talk about Broseley and the positive impact the youth service has on the streets of Broseley. It having one of the lowest crime and antisocial behaviour records in Shropshire. Vi Phillips and her team offer a varied support to the youth, teaching the young children on how to behave around the town. This has shown up lately, especially with the Young Citizens of the Year award when Bailey Everson won it this year. We've had a record amount of people putting up for this award. Visiting the Youth Club has brought in funding from various sources over the past few years, and the last one was John Campion, who came and spoke to the children and stumped up quite a lot of money. I'm pleased to just announce now that Nick Bartley has offered to come to the Youth Club and talk to the kids on November the 7th. So hopefully that will generate a bit more interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the councillors? No. Oh yeah, Gwilym, sorry. Yeah. And then we'll start with around the table.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. I was actually the cabinet portfolio holder when we introduced the rurality into the youth commissioning. Part of that was to look at the equality agenda and the message that this council sends out to the people of Shropshire. Now, be very cautious in taking the rurality element out, because what you're actually saying is that unless you live in one of the major market towns, you're going to get a different service. The other issue is, excuse me, is look at the Band D council tax for the major market towns compared to the smaller market towns and the rural areas such as Craven Arms and Clipbury, who don't have the facility to raise those funds themselves and are already paying a far higher council tax than the leading market towns. I would also say that the likes of Shrewsbury and Oswestry have a great ability to actually fund it themselves. Now, also, if you go down to the smaller market towns, over the last 10 years when we've had some elements of funding, look at the gearing we've got from that. The Shropshire Council has said, yes, we can give you this much. We've gone around the town and the parish and said, how much can you match it? Now, if we go out and say we're not going to give you anything, what message are we going to give? And I really think we should go back, you should top slice the large market towns and bring back the rurality payment. Thank you.
Right, now around the table. Start with Roger now. So Roger first, then Alan.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm puzzled by this item on the agenda. Scrutiny item. The scrutiny report is an appendix. The actual item was written after the scrutiny committee looked at and agreed what they were going to recommend. It says that this report was written after the June meeting when the scrutiny committee looked at the task and finish group and made its recommendations. The actual minutes from the June meeting is different to the minutes and the resolution that is quoted in the report before you today. There's a resolved item in the minutes for the young people's scrutiny on the 28th of June, which has an A, B and C. The A, B and C in your report today is different to that. The report before you, headed agenda item 6, uses the word we and our. I'm not sure who we and our is. But really, the report before you is fundamentally different to the task and finish group report and their findings. They majored on the geographical provisions for it. The report before you majors on the market towns and goes that way, which is very, very divergent. If you have a look at the report and the marks that were given, Shrewsbury came top as the most in need, followed by Oswestry, Market Drayton, then Bishop's Castle, which has now got 0, Gobowen, which has now got 0, then Woodchurch, then Ponsonby, Minsterley, London, which has now got 0. Wem and Chorbury is mentioned, all those were due to be funded. No, they're not. A real fundamental change. Statutorily, the council has to consult the young people to do it, and it is mentioned in one of the reports. No way has this report before you today been consulted with the young people to start with. So the Task and Finish group, who did consult with the young people, came forward with recommendations. And that to me is, my words, is trashed. Really, it doesn't make sense. If you look at 3.4...
Can I just slow you down a minute? Because if you look at the bottom of page 1, it says we are now seeking permission from the Cabinet to consult on these new proposals. And further up it does say this is a Cabinet report. This is the Cabinet response to the Task and Finish group. It isn't the report from the Task and Finish group.
The item on the agenda is scrutiny items to consider the final report from the Task and Finish group. That's the item on the agenda.
Yeah, but this is the Cabinet response to it.
It's the first time I've seen it brought forward like this. Before, we've always had scrutiny items brought forward and the Cabinet have replied to it.
And we did start by having the chairman of the scrutiny presenting it.
I understand, Chairman, but the report is here under the items, scrutiny items, is fundamentally different to what the scrutiny came forward with.
In future, if we do this, you'd like to see both reports?
Both reports separately, whichever.
Yeah.
Not the scrutiny report as an appendix to this. The scrutiny report is a fundamental report. It's important to me. That's why it's on.
You see, it's all here. In this, it's at the back of
the Task and Finish report is.
Yeah.
But then there are certain parts missing from it, like this coloured slide, which shows how the marking was done previously to allocate the funding for Shropshire, which is geographically done. And what is the report for you today? And it uses the word we, and I'm not sure who the we are.
But I'm just trying to get to the crux of the matter, not the mechanics.
The crux of the matter is that this report is written from a financial viewpoint. The scrutiny report, as I understand it, was advocating the importance of youth facilities and it being geographically spread throughout Shropshire. The report today concentrates on the market towns and the large towns, and the rural hinterland is sort of pushed to one side. Been brought forward by 4 speakers about the importance of the rural areas. Nowhere in it is there. Nowhere in this report has the young people's views been considered prior to this consultation being carried out. And I am concerned. If we go to Wem, £12,000 going down to zero. Gobowen and Salatin, £12,000 going down to zero. Ponsbury, London area, £16,000 going down to zero. Bridge North, from 11.6 thousand going up to 18,000. That to me is a fundamental change. No consultation prior to it. We've had the Task and Finish group who have spent a lot of time.
There is going to be a
into
consultation. That's the whole point. We're going out to consultation now.
The Task and Finish group report has been trashed. It's been totally disregarded from it, and completely new parameters have been taken up. And to me, that's my comment on this report.
Okay. Alan.
I think a lot of people are missing the point here, including the Task and Finish group, and including all the speakers that have spoken so far. The problem is, if this is not whether it goes to Shrewsbury or Wem or Bishop Castle, it is a massive reduction in the overall amount of money that's available for youth activities. And that's what should be addressing. People shouldn't sit here saying we should top slice the market towns or cut Shrewsbury's allocation so that we give a bit to Wem. They should be saying this report shows the massive inadequacies of this council's finance and the ongoing cuts to a very important service. The administration in putting this forward will stand condemned because of this, and they'll stand condemned as an organisation that does not look after the needs of its elderly, and they'll stand condemned because it's almost completely denying the needs of young people in its charge. It is an awful condemnation of the way in which this council is faced with and dealing with financial difficulties. It's a greater condemnation of the austerity policies of the party that this administration represents here in Shropshire, the Tory government, who's at the core of this, at a time when most of the country seems to be turning away from that philosophy. We are endorsing it. And what I think the Task and Finish group or the scrutiny panel ought to do is to go away, look at their own report and come up with clear condemnation of the overall principles behind it, which is cutting public services and cutting in public services for those who are most in need and those who are vulnerable within that society. If you look at what's happening in parts of Shrewsbury, for example, just to be parochial for a second, there is significant evidence of growing problems in this age group and their behaviour and their need for an expansion in the sort of services that the town council is offering throughout our communities. So whether this is out for consultation or not, nobody's going to say, oh, we think it's great you're slashing the services. That is going to be the point that I hope will come forward, that no longer will the people of Shropshire agree, approve and confirm policies that are denying services to vulnerable people and the most in need in our society.
Right, Cabinet, do you want to respond, Nick, or...?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Lots of points made. I don't want to go through all of them in detail. I think the fundamental point is that this is a report which is going out to consultation. Please respond to the consultation. These are proposals. If they're not right, you can argue why they're not right and argue for something different. The proposals are not ones that we would happily make in other circumstances. These are the circumstances we're in. There's a report later in this agenda which demonstrates the scale of the problem we've got to tackle, and I think that in these circumstances a significant budget cut is inevitable, and I think it's a question of how we target the resources we've got left. And if these proposals are not ideal, if they can be improved, please tell us how they can be improved, because that's the whole purpose of the consultation. I think the other point that's worth making is that the report does talk about transitional arrangements, and I know that in a number of instances that is going to be a very helpful step for us to take, and certainly I and the officers will be looking very carefully at how we can ease the situation, because clearly nobody wants a sort of cliff edge where suddenly you're getting no funding at all, having had rather a lot of funding or a reasonable amount of funding in previous years. Thank you.
From my perspective, the next item on the agenda is the financial strategy. Now, if you read the financial strategy report, you will realise this council has got some serious financial issues to address, and there are going to have to be some tough decisions taken. I think the most useful comment before was from Gwilym, actually, about the gearing of funding in some of the town and parish councils, because I think town and parish councils are going to have to take up some of this work, and it is easier for some of the big ones because of the gearing, because if you've got a bigger population it's easier to raise money than in the smaller populations. So I accept there is an issue about the rurality and how we deal with that, but the reality is that there isn't any more money. It is a question of how we spend what is in the budget, and that might need to be jiggled around with a bit to help, but you know, I don't know, but I think that's what I'd be saying, think about more than anything else, because we haven't got a money tree, and the finance of this council is pretty hard, and we're going to have to make some tough decisions in the next few months, and those decisions are not likely to be giving extra money out, it's more likely to be going the other way. So be realistic. But I do accept the issue about how the gearing works in some of the parish councils and their ability to actually put their council tax up to raise extra money to provide some of these services. And that might be something we need to sort of thinking as part of this package. Rob?
I just wanted to add, obviously, Roger highlighted the point that Gobowen has received funding and benefited from the current model of funding, and that allowed us to engage local providers for the youth clubs and other activities, which have been well attended and appreciated. But we've been quite realistic as an LJC that this possibly wouldn't continue forever, and we've worked with the existing providers and along with the local lottery group to open things up to a wider age group and look at other sources of funding. And actually, a suggestion came from one of our parish councils that in the longer term, do we want to look at this? So whilst I will be certainly taking up the consultation and probably taking up a meeting with Nick to discuss further the specifics of our area, and certainly I'll be arguing the funding case for our area, I'm pleased to hear as well that at the very least there will be a transitionary period in order for this to be considered as well. So.
Quickly then.
Yeah, it's, I just want to add that when Town Council does fund the youth club, that about £2,000, and they have done for several years. But you see, that's the town, but we are supporting the rural areas as well, which don't contribute.
And it's not for me to defend the town council in this scenario, but although everybody's critical of Shrewsbury, you must remember that the youth clubs in Shrewsbury are attended by people from a lot further than the town, from the huge hinterland as well. So it's the same problem in all the areas, but I think it is the rurality is an issue that needs just some more consideration.
But the small market towns, I mean, like when supports the swimming pool and the town hall and all the sports, so...
It's a tough world at the moment.
Right.
Right, there are some recommendations on page 2 of the report. Is everyone happy with them? Are they all agreed? Nobody's dissenting, so we'll work on the theory those are all agreed. Thank you. Right, so that's item 6. Item 7 is the financial strategy, and strange enough it's got my name on the front and Councillor Minnery's on the back. So I'll just start by saying there are going to have to be some tough decisions. The finances council are not wonderful, and at the moment, you know, we are under some pressure, and that pressure is not going to ease quickly. So everybody's going to have to take tough decisions. Members and officers, we're all in this together. We have got to work to resolve the finances of this council and to get them in a better stead than they are now, and I'm determined that will happen. And I'll leave now David to sort of go into a bit more detail.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm not going to say an awful lot because all of the detail is in the report. I do want to draw attention, though, to recommendation E, because I would like to make a slight addition to that recommendation, because I would just like to add the words on condition that there is no detriment to this council's position. I know you can assume that doesn't need to be written in. But unless it is there, then there is always the risk that things might not go the right way, and other authorities are doing the same thing. As far as that particular recommendation is concerned, it clearly is important that we examine in detail the opportunity to see what is going to happen with the 100% retention of the business rates going forward. I'm one of those who is sceptical about this being a better solution for local authorities. There will be undoubtedly local authorities around the country who will be massively better off as a result of this, because they collect huge amounts of money in their business rates. Shropshire, sadly, I don't think falls into that category, and I think they're far more likely to be potentially worse off in the long run than we currently are now. Heaven knows we're badly enough off as it is. The other thing, Leader, I wanted to talk around really is recommendation C, which simply says to note the revised funding gap, that there are no solutions yet proposed. You will see in Appendix D there are a small number of reductions which are being asked to approve today. But I didn't want members thinking that nothing is happening behind the scenes. Cabinet colleagues and directors and managers throughout the authority have been tasked with finding different ways of working, finding savings, finding efficiencies. I still believe that within the structure we have and within the way we operate, that it is possible to tease out further savings without detriment really to the services that we're offering. I certainly, and I know colleagues the same, I certainly didn't come here to start taking an axe to services. That's not why we're here at all. And Alan, yes, I am saddened that we are having to do some of the things that we are having to do. But we're between a rock and a hard place. The previous item, leader, that we've just been talking about, if you think back, 12 months or so, actually that then was destined for the complete chop. When I was portfolio holder responsible, it was me that sent it off to scrutiny to see if there was a way of keeping it going beyond the axe which was due to fall in September of this year. So it is possible sometimes to find things that you might think can't be done. So with that in mind, Leader, I will be seeking over the next few weeks to, through scrutiny, invite people to contribute to task and finish groups to look in more detail at some of the individual services, just to look at the processes we go through to see if there are areas where we can change the way we work, because I think this is going to require a complete change in attitude throughout the organisation. Historically, people have had budgets and they've spent them. Well, maybe the time has come when there are some sort of rewards for not spending it unless it's absolutely necessary, or trying to manage within the cash freeze or whatever it is. All of these things work in other organisations, so we need to see if they can be made to work here. But nothing will work, Leader, unless there are changes in attitudes and operating practices throughout the organisation. So over the next 6 to 9 months, I'm hoping that we can establish a number of these little groups who can look at the big money areas and see if there are different ways of working. Maybe pilot 1 or 2 initiatives, and I don't want to be specific today in public because I need to talk these through with colleagues, but I do have a list of things here that are the top of the list, if you like, because we do have to close this gap and we do have to be sustainable. And we have to do that, if at all possible, without actually damaging the services that the people of Shropshire enjoy. But I won't say any more, Chairman. I'll move the recommendations formally, A through to E, with that slight addition to E about the condition that it's not detrimental to us. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be pedantic, and we didn't have opportunity to discuss the change to E. And the more important things that you mentioned there, David. But the recommendation as drafted is to apply to become a business rates pilot. And I wonder if, instead of saying we can't apply unless there's no detriment, because we're going to have to apply right away, which means we now can't apply, we change what you said, David, to mean that we will not accept any business rates pilot unless there's a guarantee of no detriment. So there's a difference between applying and accepting.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think that's just a matter of words. I was in Hereford yesterday, and Herefordshire are using words to that effect. I wouldn't like to say the exact words, but if there's a detrimental effect, they're not going to have it. Yeah, so, and they're one of the councils we could well be partners with this. Right. So we're accepting the words. Right. Leslie did indicate, and then Roger. Didn't we do? No. Right, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. After 8 years or 8.5 years of Conservative rule, we are where we are. I flagged up many times about using the yellow, amber, red, and using one-off funding, which this council has been using for the last, I'll say 8 years, but it might be 6 years or 7 years. We're on a road to nothing, using one-off funding all the time, and now it is coming home to roost. Exactly. I can pick out parts in the report, and in particular on page 2, we want to do an approach is being developed in response to this, and this means understanding what we want to do and then putting our efforts into doing those things. If this council doesn't know what it wants to do now after 8 years, I wonder whether it's time for a change in administration.
I think you'll find we are understanding what we want to do, and that's where the change is happening now.
You can go through it, and I'll pick out certain phrases in the report, and I understand some of the hill or the mountain that's got to be climbed, because it's been well rehearsed, I think, in previous documents, how good this council was, having a 0% preset rise year after year and managing and doing things to come home to roost. On page 4, you say, it says there, this approach needs detailed consideration to ensure the council is not placed at risk of being unable to deliver statutory functions to an appropriate quality. Appropriate quality, not a good quality, not a caring quality, appropriate quality. It's ones that can be funding. And it goes on, and on page 6, there is a significant risk that there will be insufficient controllable budgets left within the council to mitigate pressures appearing elsewhere. And then a couple of lines down, the council's funding position will become unsustainable. Yeah, I understand what is there, and it's coming home to roost. And I can understand some of the pressures that's there, but we need to care for the people. We need to keep an eye on the people and not let the finances rule. Previous paper about the youth, and I made a reference there about being finance written. You need to pay the piper, you need to set a balanced budget, but there are different ways of doing it. And I'm not sure that the philosophy being adopted onto this paper and under papers that have been presented to recent cabinets in the future actually takes on board the less well-off, the more vulnerable people there are in Shropshire. They seem to be the ones who are being taken the money away from it. Rural areas, if you don't have a car but you've got a young person, that young person will be stuck at home after school because they won't be able to go anywhere. There'll be no transport. And it will go on like this all the way through. Later on, there's about the council tax support is being taken away. Previously there, and the paper was called in, scrutiny didn't back the call in, about taking away the pension increase for the pensioners who need support and help to live in their homes. I'm not sure where we're going, and I hope that it does change a little bit. But this, I noted, I would hope that it will be considered by appropriate scrutiny committee when we can look at some of the words in it and some of the documents. But yeah, this council needs to actually have a fundamental change.
And I think that's what's going on at the moment. That's part of the reports that are coming forward. We're actually tackling the problem, and I'm determined by the end of the this 4-year term that we will have a budget that looks sensible, because at the moment I agree it doesn't. I think somebody used the word that I was being handed a poison chalice at the time, and it is a little bit like that, but we're going to sort it out. It's not going to be easy. We're going to take tough decisions, and some of the tough decisions are the ones you talked about, and that's just the way the world is, and we're going to have to do these things because as a council, if we do want to provide decent children's services and decent adult social services, we've got to make sure we've got a decent amount of money to do it. And it's a simple equation. Without the money you can't provide the services, so we have got to do things. And it's going to be a combination of doing things by changing the way we invest money and what we do economically to raise money. But there's also got to be the other side of the equation, where if we can save on spending, we save on spending, and we bring the gap closer together by tackling both ends of it. And that's what we're going to be doing. Quickly then.
Quick one, Chairman. I can find no reference in it about consideration of any precept. The assumption seems to be that the present council tax increase will be as it is for the next 4 or 5 years. There's no consideration about having any sort of consultation via the consultation group that the council has set up or anything like that about increasing the council tax, because that would help to sort it out, and it would be maybe more evenly spread than spreading it onto some of the more vulnerable, less able.
I don't think there needs to be a debate about council tax. I think everybody would agree, certainly for the next year or two, we've got to do the maximum the government will allow us, which is 3.99. So I don't see any point in wasting lots of energy consulting on something that is going to have to happen after the next 2 or 3 years. It might be that we do start having a debate I certainly don't want to go down the road of trying to do anything extra to that, where you have to go out to the public and ask them to actually endorse, have a vote on something. We're not going down that road, so we're going to have to go to the maximum for the next 2 years. I think I did read it in one of the reports today that said 3.99.
Yeah, sure, but where I'm coming from, Chairman, is that there's no thought about doing anything else except doing that at
No,
this moment.
and I don't think there's a debate that can be had on that at the moment. I think it's the thing that has got to happen, and that's just the reality. Right, so you've got the report. Any other? Oh, sorry, yeah.
We've got a performance management scrutiny on November the 8th, been brought forward to discuss this. Are we at that stage going to have some of these little gems that David's going to bring forward about new ways of working and wonderful ways in which we can resolve this crisis, or is it going to be continuing as we are with some wing and a prayer?
We're not on a wing and a prayer, I'll tell you that.
Well, again, I'm sure that lots of people outside this room think of that, and certainly some of us within the room think of that, and that's starkly portrayed in the financial strategy and the potential disaster from some of the expressions that Roger has relayed to us.
I don't know, David, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'll happily comment on that. It's highly unlikely, Alan, that as soon as the 8th of November, that I would think we'd be in a position to be publicly talking about some of the things that I've got in mind. There is, for me anyway, a proper process that needs to be gone through with these things. People do need to be talked to. Portfolio holders need to be involved. It isn't as simple as just turning up at a performance management meeting in 2 weeks' time and saying, oh, we're going to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z, or whatever it is, and that's how we're going to save £3 million, £5 million. It isn't that. What I said was that this is going to take 6, 9 months, maybe even 12 months. It's about changing attitudes as much as it is about changing everything else. And it's a long, slow job. Won't be done quickly, and it will require people from across the council to be involved. It is a matter of setting aside, if you like, for the time being, political differences. We all, as members, need to work together. I hope that when the requests go out for people to take part in these scrutiny groups, that people from across the council will do so and will come along and contribute to the task. It is not going to be an easy task, but I firmly believe that we can bridge the gap that we need to bridge with savings without reducing further the level of services that we're offering. But that invitation will go out to everybody, and it won't be on the 8th of November, but it will go out, and I hope that all of the political groups will get involved in that and will play a full part, instead of just coming along here to criticise. And I understand why you criticise, and if we were in the other position the other way around, we'd be doing exactly the same. Of course we would. But it would be, I think, we're all here to benefit the people of Shropshire, and it would be to their benefit if, as I say, we just set aside our differences for a little while and all work together.
Okay, right. There's some recommendations on page 3 of the report, with E slightly amended, so that Clive will come up with the exact wording. So on that basis, everybody happy with the report? Okay, thank you. That's agreed then. So item 8 is council tax support scheme, and again is Councillor Millery.
Yes, that's me again. Thank you, Peter. Some tinkering with the recommendations here. Not had chance to discuss these. I did flag them up with James before last week, but I've not had a chance to run these through either Roz or the Chief Executive. The paper is what the paper is. Earlier when I was talking about the financial strategy, I said that senior officers have been, across the council, have been tasked with ways of either finding savings or generating additional income. And this one falls under the additional income category. And as part of that tasking, they were asked to compare what we do in Shropshire against what is done elsewhere in the country. And it appears that we are one of the few now who have not changed our rules. Telford apparently have a more stringent policy even than the option 4, which is being suggested here. And there are others also who are far more stringent. If you were to ask me if I personally was content with everything that's in here, then I will tell you that I'm not personally content with everything in here. That is why the recommendations are just a little bit different. I do want to put the emphasis on scrutiny and the role of scrutiny here, and although we cannot demand that scrutiny look at it, I'm absolutely sure that scrutiny will want to look at it, as is suggested in paragraph 514, I think it is. The leader and one or two others, not long after this administration took office, went to great lengths to say that he wanted to change the way scrutiny worked. He said that he wanted scrutiny to be involved before decisions were made and not to be told afterwards, and I very much support that approach. So to me it is important that scrutiny do lead this consultation process. I am advised that there are legal reasons why we have to formally agree which option we want to go for and then ask scrutiny, and then it goes to council. The decision isn't taken here, the decision is taken in council actually, but it's a policy change. So that's the path that we will be going down, but I want to make that more explicit by changing the recommendation slightly. I would like to draw attention to recommendation A. There is a typo in there. The scheme is for 2018-19, not 2017-18, which is the current year that we're in, because it can't be retrospective, cannot come into play, whatever we do, it cannot come into play until the 1st of April next year. And on B, B is fine, but C, I would like to add that the Cornish Management Scrutiny Committee be asked with leading the to lead the consultation. So I'm requesting, not instructing.
Okay, right, I think that's all right. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I noted the 514 and I see the Chairman and the scrutiny is in the audience. I will be certainly asking the Chairman. I think the Chairman will take it on board anyway.
I'm sure.
I
Yeah, I'll not have a chance to ask.
I can't speak with the Chairman. But what I had originally, Chairman, was that of the option 4, which is the one that's recommended, and maybe we might be able to tease something out of scrutiny, I see over 50% of the expected income that's going to be raised by it is going to be lost in council tax arrears.
Yeah,
so we won't be chasing up council tax arrears because of this. So over 50% of this is going to be taken up by people who should be legally paying their council tax already, but we won't have facility to chase it up. And let's say that's one of the actions that I want to pick up when it goes to scrutiny. I use the word when, but yeah, I noted at this time.
Right, any other comments? No, so there are the recommendations, we agree those, it will go through a consultation process, hopefully led by the scrutiny panel. Okay, thank you. And now we have the consultation on the preferred scale and distribution of development of the Shropshire Local Plan Review. Councillor Macy.
Thank you. You've got an extensive report and accompanying documents in front of you, and today's agenda item is seeking approval for consultation on the preferred scale of housing and employment development in Shropshire during the period to 2036, together with the preferred distribution. So let me start by addressing the scale of the development that's proposed. The government recently assessed our minimum need, and that's minimum, as 25,400 houses. So we have no option but to deliver these homes. That is the government target we have to work to. The paper sets out a target slightly above this in order that we can meet the aspirations of our county and at the same time address some of the challenges which currently exist. And these challenges won't be new to people, and they include a gap in the skills required to attract and retain certain employers, constraints on the availability of our employment land in certain areas, and increasing competition to attract employment from both our neighbours and further afield. We also know about Shropshire has an ageing population. The latest ONS population projections estimate Shropshire's 65 and over population will grow by 56%. Making up 33% of our entire population by 2036, which is well above the national average. The challenge for this council is how it provides the services and infrastructure it's statutorily required to deliver in the face of these challenges, whilst also balancing the books, as we've heard. The other factor to take into account is that in table 1 of point 2.13, I believe it is that we're not starting from zero to achieve this target. We already have 18,000 houses identified within the current plan, leaving us with a requirement for an additional 10,000 houses in this new plan period, which runs for an extended 10 years. Therefore, the figures outlined in the paper are proposed to enable Shropshire to put the right development in the right places, to enable the county to be on the front foot with a clear plan that delivers a Shropshire that is a great place to live, work, study and enjoy, both now and well into the future. The second major point which the paper addresses is the distribution of this growth, and we're proposing that this would change to a more urban focus. This is for a number of reasons, but the primary driver is that the majority of the economic growth will come in the market towns and Shrewsbury, and this will need to be supported by a local workforce, and we all agree that we need the right level of infrastructure to accompany any development, especially if we're wanting to attract more people of working age to our county. The other change proposed within the document is to move to an objectively assessed methodology for identifying those villages which would be community hubs. In the current plan, villages have had the option to become a hub and take some development in a controlled manner with a number of protections in place. The fairness of this approach has been raised with me on a number of occasions, and it has also led to a number of unintended consequences. The consultation in the year made it clear to us that we needed to find a fair and equitable way to distribute development in these areas so that some villages don't become unavailable to the new generation and that all the strain is not taken by a few. Therefore, the report proposes we move to a new system that looks at the ability of a village to be sustainable on a standard set of criteria. Currently, we have 36 hubs. In the report, you will see we're proposing 40. However, we'll put in a number of protections that allow us to manage development outlined in point 6.4, which I'll just briefly run through because I know these will be important to those that are designated as hubs. The first is that the development within the community hub will be controlled by a single criteria-based policy, a draft of which is provided as part of the consultation documents. The draft policy has been developed using the criteria consulted upon and was supported by the majority of respondents. Individual development guidelines will be established for each community hub as part of the next round of preferred options in spring 2018. Now this is talking about actually putting a number so that these hubs have a clear idea of the sort of scale of development they will be looking at over the plan period. One of the suggestions in the consultation earlier in the year was the removal of development boundaries. It was quite clear from the feedback that communities wanted these to be retained to give them the certainty about where this development would take place. So under the current proposals, we would look to identify development boundaries in all of these hub areas. We'd also go further and look to, as we did with the SAMDEV, actually look at specifying certain sites where it might be appropriate, so that you are looking at how many you are expecting as development, the boundaries within you're expecting that to take place, and where appropriate, exactly the sites that would take place on. The level at which the housing guideline is set for each hub and settlement and the need for site allocations will reflect the size of the settlement, its development opportunities, capacity and constraints. This won't be a one-size-fits-all for every hub, with them evenly distributed across the whole. This will take into account the individual circumstances of each hub. So I hope that a lot of that will allay some of the fears and the comments that I've already received back, and trying to give that certainty. There may well be opportunities for strategic sites to come forward during the plan period, which include the former Ironbridge power station and also Turnhill, and that could be used to deliver further development. The other thing which I think I should make mention of is garden villages have been publicly discussed of late. At this stage we haven't got any specific proposals about these in Shropshire, and we don't require them to meet the target that we're setting. They may be something that we revisit in the future as we go through this process. So, in conclusion, the press told me the other day that certainty is not a sexy concept when it comes to talking about these things, and will not make the headlines. But I think from my point of view, the more certainty we can give to residents, communities, developers, and those that need to make investments in the county, all of which are defensible in planning terms, the better. This stage, along with the future stages to be held, all make up the plan. Once the plan is complete, it's important to remember that this all has to go to a government independent planning inspector, as did the SAMDEV. So therefore, I put forward the report and its recommendations.
Right, thank you. There were one or two other councillors, Councillor Turner, who did want to comment. Councillor Turner first.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I've read the report and listened closely to the portfolio holder's presentation. Whilst recognising the need for the Council to progress the local plan review, I am concerned that the aspirations of those communities with neighbourhood development plans, especially Muchway, but obviously including Shipton as well, should not be lost in the consultation on the scale and distribution of future growth. The report at 5.3 refers to the issues and strategic options consultation earlier this year, and particularly refers to respondents' comments highlighting a desire to see greater distinction between market towns to reflect differences in their scale, role and location. It was exactly these sentiments that led Muchway not to be in the vanguard 17 communities identified to create a neighbourhood plan under the localism agenda in 2011. Whilst I'm pleased that the report says that officers will work closely with local councils in neighbourhood plan areas to help them review their existing plans, it should not be at the cost of those distinctive features which help deliver growth in the manner envisaged by the local community. And in particular, if you'll indulge me in Muchway, these include a high priority on small-scale developments to meet local housing needs, recognition of the integrity of Muchway as a distinct community given the close proximity of Telford, a resistance to being treated as a commuter dormitory, and growth that recognises its rapid response to a catchment area and the limited capacity of the sewage system. Of course, since the Muchway neighbourhood plan was adopted by Shropshire Council in 2014, the uncertainty about the future of the nearby Ironbridge power station site has crystallised into a real threat to Muchway as one of the key centres, and as indicated by the portfolio holder, one of the key centres to deliver growth at a more moderate scale, as indicated in the preferred options consultation. We're now at a point where Shropshire Council, in seeking to roll forward its local plan to 2036, is in danger of riding roughshod over community-led plans, which may mean far greater resistance when planning applications come forward in due course. And we don't really want that. Will the portfolio holder please be sensitive to this concern, and to what extent does he understand the needs and circumstances of communities such as Muchway, which went through 26 consultation events over 2 years and many iterations before a neighbourhood development plan was agreed by 84% at a local referendum? And I would imagine that any consultation that came out of this council which achieved an 84% majority in one direction or another would be very, very welcome. We're now embarking on only an 8-week consultation immediately following the library and car park consultation at the same time as the place plan review cycle and the youth services consultation, which was referred to earlier. There's a distinct danger of consultation overload and fatigue, and especially for small parishes that only meet every 2 months. So I look forward to the portfolio holders' comments on that. Thank you very much.
Want to respond?
Well, firstly, I can certainly assure Councillor Turner that we will be sensitive to the local plans. We're glad to see so many communities are taking it into their own hands through the different routes available to them, and neighbourhood plans is certainly one of them. You'll have seen, as you quoted from point 6.7, that we are committed to working with those areas that have those plans in place, and I'm aware that there are a number of other areas that are bringing forward similar plans. Obviously, we take a view as a whole, and you'll see from that point that we're identifying an initial growth guidelines, but we will be guided to a great degree by those neighbourhood plans that they've worked so hard on. I'm not sure I would describe the power station as a threat. I'd say it was an opportunity. We may agree to differ on that one, but there are no firm plans with that at the moment, but it's certainly important that we as a planning authority play a role within that to ensure that we get it right in the neighbouring areas as well. As far as consultation, you'll be glad to hear this is only the first stage of consultation. the deadline, the timetable that we set out in June, we will be consulting on this first stage, which is obviously the scale and the distribution. We'll then be following that by the site specifics, and then we will also be looking at the policies which apply to it. So what I would encourage is trying not to overload communities with too much at once, is trying to establish a way forward on each of those principles first, so it can feed into the bigger plan, so that they do have the time at each stage to consider what comments they would like to make.
Can I just come back and just say that I fully recognise that the power station and indeed the other strategic sites are a great opportunity for the county. I'm very concerned about the small communities which surround the power station and others, because the risk or the danger of the infrastructure being completely swamped is one that clearly needs to be treated very sensitively. So yes in the round, but no in the specific.
Now I'm going to ask a question. I don't know whether I should ask this question or not. Now, Much Wenlock, because it's got a neighbourhood plan, gets an extra proportion of SIL money going directly to it, because they get 25% instead of 15%. Now, nothing that you're doing now will affect that, will it?
No, as far as the legislation goes, if you have a neighbourhood plan in place, that entitles you to the 25% of SIL.
Right, I'm just making sure that we all understood that clearly. And I agree what you're saying about consultation, but unfortunately, because we need to do a number of things at the moment, there are going to be a lot of consultations kicking around for the next few months, and that's just because we are in that's where we are in the council cycle. We've got to take some strategic decisions, and we want to consult.
Yeah, I recognise that entirely, but the facts of life are that volunteers on one evening every month or one evening every 2 months are going to have some difficulty in coping with all of this, and I will give them whatever help I can.
Yeah. No, I acknowledge that, but it is a difficult time, and that's the way it is, I'm afraid. Yeah. Cheers. Right. Anybody else on that? Joyce.
Thank you. Robert, I think you've come to know my residents rather well over the last week or so. I have two very active residential groups in my area. I've got Trevelyan Rural Protection Group, which was set up a few years ago to try and protect the village against a lot of development, and Naseby Rural Protection Group, which was set up quite recently. I've had numerous emails which I forwarded to you questioning the methodology and the threshold that has been set in this paper. I've discussed the contents of these emails with you, and also Edward West, I'd like to thank you for your correspondence with me over these emails. And I'd ask that this in-depth look is undertaken along with the consultation to the accuracy of the methodology and allocations of points pushing villages into hub status. Thank you.
Right, any other comments on the local plan? Right, yeah, so Rob's
then we'll go along and use it. Yes, as I say, I've received all the correspondence you forwarded to me, and you have been making the case to us from the very start, the day these were released. I'm more than happy to give the assurance that we're happy to meet with those that feel that the methodology is not being applied in the correct manner, and work with them to ensure that that is the case. They need the confidence, as well as ourselves, that we've got this right before we take it forward and adopt it as a full plan.
Thank you very much.
Roger.
Fairly quick, Chairman. Thank you to the Portfolio Hub for continuing with the local development group. It is appreciated that it is cross-party and it's there. A couple of small questions. I welcome the development boundary, and it is a change, and I think that will be welcomed. But and the number of houses, have you any indication when that number will be there? Because I have a meeting tonight with a number of parish and Shrewsbury Council, and that's one of the questions that Eddie West, who will be coming, but whether Eddie knows, or that will be one of the questions that will be asked about hubs and indicated parameters, a minimum and a maximum for that. When will that number be brought forward?
Well, that one I can give you an answer on. You won't have the numbers yet. You'll see from the papers in this that we've identified numbers for what they're referring to as the principal and the key centres, which is your larger market towns and Shrewsbury itself. At this stage, the rest of them have just been identified in name rather than number. This consultation will end on the 22nd of December. Once all the responses from that have been considered, early-ish in the new year, there'll be a release of the next stage of the planned consultation, which will actually talk about the figures for individual hubs, clusters and areas, and it will also look at individual sites as well that came forward through the call for sites. So yeah, that'll be the next stage.
Okay, right, so is everyone happy with the report and it will go out now to consultation? Right, so that's agreed. Item 10 is exclusion of the public and the press. I'll move it, somebody can second it. Yeah. I'm sorry about